being that it's 7 p.m., I'm going to call the meeting to order. Michelle, can you please turn the sunshine off?
Let the minutes show that adequate notice of this meeting as required by Public Law 1975, Chapter 231 has been provided by the annual notice, which has been posted on the bulletin boards, filed with the Borough Clerk, and has been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Star Ledger, and the Two River Times.
Thank you. Can I please have a roll call?
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Council President Good.
Here.
Councilmember Pacheco. Here. Councilmember Patapoulos.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott. Here. Councilmember Davidson. Here. Councilmember McNamara. Here. Thank you.
Thank you. And as a reminder to everyone, with the new day set up, if you have any commentary amongst yourselves, if you could go out to the hallway so it doesn't get picked up by the microphones. Thank you. Everyone can please join me in saluting the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence of your choosing. Thank you. Before we open up to the public, I do have a couple questions on, some updates, I should say, on the agenda. First thing is, on Sunday we received information from the fire chief requesting to hold their annual fire inspection, which is usually done in May, but needed to be postponed because we were still under the public health emergency, to be held on November 7th. So that was received on Sunday. You all received a copy of it today. It was posted to the public yesterday, but it was not forwarded out till today to the governing body. But we'll talk about that when we get to that part of the agenda. But that is technically an added item since the original agenda went out. And regarding Resolution 21821, the official first name is Edgar. So that's an occasion to make the motion later, if that's okay. And then I have a question regarding R22321 in the resolution. It indicates that it's public works utility equipment.
Where does it reference that now?
22321, now therefore,
I see.
be resolved number 1 says it's public works. Can that be changed?
That's my error, obviously, the problem of doing two similar resolutions at the same time. That should be following fire apparatus equipment.
And on 21621, I'm not sure if I missed something between the draft and the final, but I don't have the exhibits for that. And I just actually a question on process for that as well. Is that something that goes to the construction official first prior so that they know what the developer's agreement is going to be that they have to follow before it comes to the governing body?
It is not reviewed by the construction official. Typically, and in this case, once the development approval is secured through the planning board, the next step in the process is the developer's agreement that specifies various off-site processes. It basically implements the compliance requirements that the planning board may have imposed. So this is prepared through the borough attorney's office in reviewing the planning board resolution of approval. This does not directly involve the construction official, as these public improvements that are the subject of the developer's agreement are generally inspected by the borough engineer through that escrow process.
So the borough engineer, not the planning board engineer.
That's correct.
So has Trevor reviewed it? My point is, has someone else reviewed this besides
Yeah, this had been in the works for some time, as I think everyone is aware. The approval for PRC-ES Associates goes back a number of years. I know that this first came to my attention about a year ago, and it was
Well, you and I
still,
met with them, right?
right,
They
it
were
was
gonna
still
get
in the
this
works.
then,
Right.
So we waited for this for a year. So did they just get this to us now?
Yes, they did. In fact, I believe it was executed on their behalf October 5th.
And do we know where the missing exhibits are?
I do not. Most of the exhibits are references of public documents. Specifically, they reference the, I believe it's the 15 pages of the approved site plan that would not actually be, those are oversized documents that would not be included here, so they are included by reference. The other exhibits, planning board resolutions, can be included here.
I'll leave that up to whether the governing body wants those added or not before they motion on that. And Michelle, R220, is that J? For the, electrical, And then just a couple questions on payments of bills, please, Jay. Page 3, preliminary engineering for the total of for the month for engineering cost was $41,000, but $18,864. That's for the pedestrian safety. So which grant is that one?
That is the TAP grant.
And then for page 6, there is a payment for $500 for the skate park event for instruction. I think there was a meeting in between, but I'm not sure if the event coordinator was there for that meeting, because my understanding is the instruction did not take place. Is that correct?
I was at the event. I did not see any specific instruction. I was told that someone was there that was doing it. I did not stay for the whole thing, so we have not gotten a recap of the event yet from the person who coordinated it.
We hold that one just so
Sure.
we get clarification on that one, because I heard 2 different stories on that event.
Yeah, I was at that event as well as a participant with my kids, and I didn't see an instructor that was dedicated to that, but there was a gentleman that offered to help teach children, but from what I understood, he wasn't the designated instructor that was hired for the event.
Well, if we could just get
Sure.
clarification on that before we pay that, please. And then page 12, Knox Company.
Yes, those are for the purchase of Knox box equipment, which are a system. It's a key system for fire and to have access into emergency situations.
Thank you.
One to private property.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other governing body members have any questions before we open to the public for agenda items? Councilman Bennett?
I have a question about the communication piece from the Harbor Commission. So my question is more towards Leslie. If we accept that as a communication, does that acknowledge those as bylaws for the Harbor Commission? Because according to the ordinance, just to let you know, I think from brief conversations Jay and I had, it seems the ordinance says that the governing body does not need to approve bylaws, but I want to make sure, if that's the case, I think we have to have discussions about that communication, the bylaws that we should, that we send.
I think the person that presented those is here this evening and
Yeah.
will probably answer questions.
Anyway, that was more legal question, that's my question.
Whether or not by accepting the communication, you are accepting the bylaws?
Yes.
And I think you should make it clear that what your intent is. If the communication is for purposes of the communication, that they are being provided, that's one thing. As opposed to if there's an intent to actually approve the bylaws, then that should be stated.
they're not in the 3 that we're approving, they're just in the received files, and that's typically where we put those kinds of communications. Files.
Anyone else? Councilwoman McNamara?
21621, my question is, it looks like all of the paperwork there is 5 years old, and I just don't know enough about the process. Is there something in place that mandates them, if any rules or regulations have changed in 5 years, that they're held to higher standards? I don't know enough about what we're carrying forward. Is there anything with a 5-year-old document that we should be discussing or looked at?
Well, the redevelopment agreement sets forth what the obligations are, and you are held to the law as the law is currently.
Okay, so if anything has changed legally from the state or any organizations,
Yeah, and it's.
based on what they signed 5 years ago, we hold them to the higher the new
As
standard.
stated in the developers agreement, it's pretty specific what the obligations and responsibilities are, and with respect to the complying with laws, it's very specific.
Okay. My other question is 22321, the fire apparatus. Just, that's the one we went out for bond, well, we approved an ordinance for a bond, right, for $700,000?
That's correct.
Okay. And this looks like it's $685,000. I seem to recall from a prior fire truck purchase that there were additional expenses once we got the equipment. And I am curious, do we know, this leaves just $15,000. Do we know if there are additional expenses, like, where they paint the truck or put equipment on, or?
Mayor, if I may, I asked that question, the answer from the fire chief is this is all in. There should not be a painting, decal, or anything like that. Any other expenses, such as transferring the equipment from the old to the new, is just gonna be in-house, moving, those kind of tools over. But there should not be any.
It's all inclusive.
Okay, thank you.
No Christmas ornaments hanging from the roof.
I think that's it, thank you.
Anyone else good?
Mayor, if I could just ask Leslie a question. So the developers agreement is a direct reflection of the planning board resolution?
Correct.
Okay.
And it is included as an attachment.
The resolution itself is included as an attachment?
Yes.
Yep.
Have a motion to open to the public for agenda items only,
Motion.
except for the ordinance hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public have questions on the agenda items? Mr. Murrow?
John Merle at 34 Broad Street. Regarding the 21421, Mr. Delaney, the Bayshore Improvement Trust expenditure of $9141. Just get a little explanation on that.
Okay. $4,640 of that are expenses related to the dredging permit process. There's a small amount of $87.50 related to the boat ramp kiosk. The indication is that that's software. I believe that's a software, either an update or an annual or a licensing fee.
The license.
$2,783 for crushed stone that was related to the Cedar Street outfall pipe and washout that was experienced actually in several previous storms, but most recently in Ida. $1,600 was a portion of the cost for lawn maintenance services, and I believe that should total.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, 21521, there was an error originally when the council passed the amount. My question is that the deadline to submit that application was September 16th. Has the county given us an extension because of the error to correct that?
I believe we're gonna submit the resolution to amend it and then see if they'll accept the resolution, but I don't think we could do it reversed, right?
Actually, the county has acknowledged it as a complete application subject to receipt of this correcting resolution.
Excellent. 21921, the property maintenance officer, the hiring. I applaud this position being on the agenda. Just a couple questions. It wasn't really explained in past meetings. So it is a part-time position. It's $26,000 a year based on the hours and dollar figure per hour.
That would be a maximum.
Maximum. And did any of the council members, were they in on the interviews of that position? Or
Yes.
Yes? There was? Okay. And 22121, the purchase of the sewer jet and related equipment. What is the related equipment?
It's nozzles, hoses, various attachments.
Okay. So the cost is $92,171?
Yes.
Okay. Does that include training for the public works? Because it didn't say it on the resolution.
Yeah, I don't see it specifically referenced as part of the quote.
Okay. But we're gonna have to train them, right?
There is some training, although I believe this is similar to the unit that was previously utilized.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lee?
Michael Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have apologize about a dozen items that I have questions about. Councilman Good and Councilwoman Pacheco regarding redevelopment. The status of the First and Waverly project bond, especially in light of condition number 3, which required underground utilities, and condition number 7, which required an increase in the stormwater pipe underneath First Street to a capacity of 18 inches. So if you could give a status report on that bond relative to those conditions which have not been met. The Uptown update on the plans to address with the owner of Aeromarine, the significant erosion problem that's occurring and the lack of a bulkhead at that site, and to also update on the status of the Mariner Village redevelopment project and the designation of a redeveloper. Councilman Potopoulos, regarding complete streets. Latest schedule for the public meeting on the pedestrian safety improvement program, which was originally going to be in February and then was going to be in September, and no insight at all as to when we're going to have that meeting. Also, it's interesting, on First Street and also on a couple other streets, there's markouts for sewer and water in green and blue. Is any insight as to what's going on there? Relative to traffic calming, when are we going to get our 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs? And are four-way stops, especially at the corner of First and Broad. I have to tell you, the intersection of First and Broad at night is extremely dangerous. There's no lighting, and cars come down that hill faster than 25 miles an hour and take that turn. And it's so bad, when Mike Palmisano and I walked to I think it was the Environmental Commission, we actually walked all the way down the promenade and came up on the gazebo because with two adults, it was too dangerous to cross. Any borough response to the letter to the borough clerk from 149, Port 149 regarding their bulkhead project, which brought up a whole set of questions about who owns that lots 20 and 21 on that block. I point out that the open space recreation element in the master plan, two versions of it, and the green the state funding for Green Acres also all list those lots as under borough ownership. So what is going on there, and why are the signs saying no parking on borough-owned lots still in place? Councilwoman McDermott. The NPP floodgates, they've been repaired, but we had some fairly significant flooding on Fireman's Park and the Bend on American Legion Drive last week, 3 or 4 days of it. And multiple days, the floodgates were not operated. I called twice to the dispatcher to get the floodgates operated. So what's going to be the process? When are we going to get a process in place to use these floodgates and effectively use them for the safety and health of residents of Keyport? As I said, they were not operated. You can check the log. I called in. Councilwoman Davison, regarding the failure of the construction office to ensure that all the conditions for projects are met, such as the First and Waverly failure, the 55 West Front failure, and the 25 East Front pump station failure. To get these conditions met before the COs were issued. Status of process for resolving the inconsistency between in the land use requirements element between the requirement for parking in the GCD district and the actual parking specs in the same ordinance. One saying parking is required, the other saying parking is not required. Councilwoman McNamara, status of the updates of the communications section of the OEM manual for emergencies. I've learned from talking to pretty experienced firemen that apparently right now we only have 2 fire sirens that work. I think one of them's over by you, Mayor Kennedy, and one's right across the street from me. I checked with some neighbors within 2 or 3 blocks of my house, and those fire sirens are not audible to the point at their homes where they override air conditioning, override air conditioning, TVs, radios, etc. So right now, what's the value of these fire sirens to the point where setting them off at night is very disturbing. Firemen are home, they have their electrons, they don't need to be set off at night, and second, they don't cover the town, so they're not functional. J, the schedule for plans to eliminate Division Street basin flooding, and the schedule for for posting the subdivision and site plan ordinance under the ordinances listed on the borough website, which are missing and which have been a gap at planning board hearings. I don't know that the message has got to the planning board, that those ordinances exist. On your resolutions, Resolution 216-21, Developers Agreement. I found that very interesting. I'm just curious, the bond amount was specified at about $34,000. How that $34,000 bond amount compares to the bonding that was done for First and Waverly, which only had 6 units. This has 26 units. I'm very surprised at the level of that bonding, and also the fact that I was involved very much in the work before the planning board for that project, and there were some conditions which my perception, and I didn't have time to check it, which are not being met. One of the conditions was that there would be a roadway between the development homes back to the wetland area for maintenance purposes. And the roadway, back when the project was first before the board, was there and visible. But since then, there's been so much erosion along the edge of the creek on borough-owned property, which is eroding, that if that erosion continues, it's going to undermine the development, the homes on the edge of the development. And I know when Mr. Gallo was here, there was discussions, the borough was willing to donate that land, that site, to the developer. So the borough would not be responsible for bulkheading that curve right at the entrance to the creek. And there used to be a building, an insurance building, between the development and the creek. And the erosion is so great that that building was abandoned, the borough got it, and the building no longer exists. So we have a long-term, probably short-term issue with the fact that the erosion is occurring so fast that it's completely wiped out the old site, most of it that's borough-owned, and is now starting to approach the retaining wall that the developer has put in. And it seems to me this issue should be resolved as part of the developer's agreement. And again, I'll go back. I didn't see the development agreement until this afternoon, so I didn't have time to check. I'm really questioning whether multiple conditions have been met or can be met by this developer. The code enforcement. It's great to see we got a code enforcement officer. I tried to do some homework. It doesn't look like he lives in Keyport. And so I'm a little concerned about his passion for the borough. And I don't know how he makes a living at $20 an hour. I find that very interesting. The same thing with the electrical code inspector. His salary numbers, but I didn't see any specification on how many hours would be covered by that salary. And now, if we look forward to major development projects going on in Keyport, Hudson Point, the Raritan Cove, potentially in the future Mariner Village, are we going to have enough? Do we have enough? Do we have a process for increasing his hours to deal with those going forward? unfinished business. The ownership of the Fireman's Park lots 20 and 21 on block 21-02. That came up in a resolution, I think, a month ago, and the issue is that who owns that lot? If you look at the open space recreation element, and there's two versions of it, both versions that were approved by this council state that lots 20 and 21 are borough-owned lots, and they are also listed in the Green Acres list of borough-owned lots. So, if the borough doesn't own these,
That item is still under review and why it wasn't listed back on the agenda, because we haven't received other information.
I want to bring it to the attention of the council people, that our open space recreation elements clearly delineate these properties as borough properties. Also, Green Acres says if we lose these properties, we have to provide twice as much acreage in recreation space. And okay, another unfinished business, and I didn't see it here. I was hoping the issue of the maintenance of the drainage ditches, floodways, which contributed significantly to the flooding on East 3rd, and also the maintenance of the drainage ditches that we allowed developers to fill in that contributed to the flooding on Atlantic Street. I'm really concerned these items aren't listed under unfinished business. The unfinished business list is empty. So that must say to me, as a resident, you have no interest in them, or they're done. And you really should list unfinished business items as unfinished, even if you'd say no action, no update. At least that they're on the record. It's a good management process. The 5G network, I shared with members of council the condition of the utility poles along First Street. They're really sad situation. There's multiple poles which have cables.
Mr. Lane, can we please stick to the agenda?
Well, this is unfinished business.
Yes.
I'm pressing for this to be an unfinished
You can
business
bring
item.
You can bring this up under general public at the end of the meeting, please.
Well, I was hoping the council people would discuss it under unfinished business. I urge you to take it as an unfinished business item. Okay, that's all I had at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Mr. Grant?
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Borough Council.
Good evening.
On a resolution of 22521, can you all explain that? Excuse me.
Mr. Bowman?
Certainly, Mayor. The borough has a long-standing financial agreement with Bethany Manor regarding as you're probably aware, the nature of that residence. This is supporting the transfer of that assignment of the financial agreement to a new owner.
Okay.
It has no direct financial impact either to the borough or to the old or new owners, but this is a way to document that the transfer has taken place and that the agreement has transferred as well.
All right. Can you explain Resolution 22121?
Yes, that is the purchase of the storage jet Vector that we've been long waiting for the DPW department.
Okay. Madam Mayor, how much does that purchase cost? What is it going to cost the borough?
This was built into the budget this year as a,
It's the $92,171.
So that's how much the taxpayers ought to pay for that.
Yes, well, technically the water sewer utility ratepayers, but essentially the same.
All right,
And right now, we're paying thousands and thousands of dollars a year to call out emergency people to do it every time, which is often in this borough, so,
which is kind of crazy, but, can you explain resolution 22221?
sure, that is to, through the cooperative agreement, for purchasing, emergency vehicles. That's a purchase of a new police vehicle.
Right, okay. That's good, going for a good cause. Can you explain resolution 22321?
That is, the fire apparatus, for a replacement of a outdated, fire truck that needs to be replaced.
Okay, a couple more, 22421, can you explain that too?
Yes, for the Church Street project, we recently went out to bid, and the bid, has come back and been opened, and that is for, to appoint the contract for that work, is that correct, Jay?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right, and, one more, resolution 21621, what's that all about?
The property that's in relation to is, planning board approval from October of 2016 for the, boat works, well, no, I'm kidding. Longview Boat Works project next to Keyport Fishery, or across the creek from Keyport Fishery, the 26 townhomes.
Okay,
So this is to move that project forward.
and of course, that's by the bulkhead, which I've been saying something has to be done about, but I won't get into that.
It's across the street, but yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Mr. Litwack, you have your hand up.
Alfred Litwack, 60 Walnut Street. I'll be real quick. One of the things in your packet today was on the Harbor Commission's bylaws. I just wanted to state that our intent, having served on the Harbor Commission, being the chairman this year, was to submit that to you at this time. We weren't looking for a vote today. However, we are hoping that you won't just accept it, but that you will vote on it, because there is a monetary approval in there, and we don't want to do that without you seeing that and voting on it. We don't know whether you would rather have us come at some time and explain any questions on it, whether you want to do that online, but however you want to move forward on that, just let us know. We would be glad to do that. We'd be glad to answer any questions ongoing.
Thank you, Ms. Clover. I know we spoke earlier in the year, and you had addressed that you would like to draft the bylaws, and I commend you for working with the commission on working on that.
Okay, just let us know how you'd like to proceed, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public on agenda items? Do I have a motion to close to the public?
Motion? Second.
All in favor? Committee reports, Council President Good.
Thanks, Mayor.
Councilman Good, can you just hold the microphone closer? You guys need to do the committee reports, if you could do that, please, for the recording, thank you.
We received the correspondence from the fire department about the inspection as an add-on for November 6th at noon, Fireman's Park. Obviously, we have the purchase of the fire apparatus on the agenda. Don't need to recap that. We more in line with the redevelopment issues. I think we received some correspondence regarding the potential redeveloper for Peterson's. I think he has new ideas after our last meeting with the town didn't pan out according to him, so he wants to chat again, so we'll set that up. We got correspondence from Browns Point's attorney, which I think we need to discuss more, which probably also needs to, will lead into whether or not we redesignate them as the redeveloper. My personal opinion is that's still up in the air, based upon what they submitted. The First and Waverly question Mr. Lane brought up, spoke with the developer on the utilities issue. I think that there is as was relayed to me, JCP&L won't put it underground. I don't know whether or not that's true or not, but what he was going to do would be submitting a application before the planning board to amend the approval. Not sure about the outfall pipe extension. Brown's Point I got. That is about it, except I do just want to note with regard to Mr. Lane's question about the 21. If I remember correctly, the issue was not ownership of the lots, but it was what are the lot lines due to the deeds going back so long that they were measured from the center of the creek, which is kind of shifted over the last 100 years. So I'm not sure that anybody actually disputes who owns those lots. It's really a question of where are the lot lines than anything else. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pacheco?
Sorry, I'm short. Awesome. For Harbor Christian, Mr. Litwack actually stole my thunder because I was also going to discuss the bylaws. We also had a discussion at our last meeting about the kiosk and the status of the kiosks. We'd asked Mr. Delaney to begin maybe researching how much a newer one would cost, as that one's now, we've had it for a few years and it was already a few years old. It might be worth looking into because of the repairs. Just research will obviously come to everybody. We also spoke about the status of the boat ramp dredging permit process and also no wake buoys. For the Municipal Alliance, coordinator job has been posted and the hiring process should begin soon. I was looking over to Mr. Delaney to jump in, but he's left the room. And Red Ribbon Week starts in the schools on October 25th, so Monday through next Friday on the 29th. And hold on, I have my police report here. We had 613 calls for service this month, 22 case files with the Detective Bureau. Just some of the traffic safety stats, there were 60 motor vehicle stops this month. On October 15th, they had coffee with a cop, with great turnout, so thank you to all that came. On the 17th, there was an investigation on a video that went viral on the internet, and through the thorough investigation by our Detective Bureau, ended with the suspect being charged with second-degree injuring the welfare of a child in assault. On the 18th, Monday, the police department made an arrest and was able to apprehend the subject that committed an armed robbery in Neptune. On the 21st, the People Police will be giving a child safety seminar for ages 6 and up, Halloween safety tips and some self-defense lessons. So I think I'll try to get my kid there, so hope to see you there. On the 23rd, the police department will take part in Operation Take Back from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's an opportunity for you to bring your used medications to the police department and drop it in the take back box. Just a reminder, if you have vape pens or e-cigarettes, the batteries must be removed from there because they're a fire hazard. Don't forget the Halloween curfew is in effect on October 30th and the 31st at 9 p.m. the ordinance 17-15, amended a prior ordinance that established that curfew. And then just please, if you haven't already, follow the police department Facebook for road closures and updates. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Stockley?
Thank you, Mayor. The Environmental Commission met and beach sweeps are this weekend, October 23rd at 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It would help, and you should register at cleanoceanaction.org. There is still plenty of space available for the Keyport Clean Ocean Action beach sweeps over at Cedar Street Park Beach. And the Finance Committee also met, and we discussed, we found out and confirmed recently that the money from the ARP, the American Rescue Plan Fund, can be used for emergency services. Expenses, some emergency services expenses, and we've looked into possibly using that money to purchase some much-needed equipment for the fire department, the first aid, and possibly OEM. We'll get into more specifics with that, but we have, Councilman Good and I have discussed this with some of the other council members, and in a non-quorum atmosphere, obviously, just to get a test of the waters to see how everybody felt about that, but we should talk about that in public session at some point. The other use for those funds could be used for infrastructure improvements, and we would hope that the grant is $730,000, and it's split into two payments, one this year and one next year. And we've actually received, Jay, we've received $365,000, is that correct?
That's my recollection of what the
Yep, we
CFO
received $365,000, which hasn't been allocated yet to anything. So we can discuss that at either tonight or at a future meeting. The Church Street, as you see, we're voting to award the contract for the Church Street project. We did discuss the bond ordinances for the Church Street project, broad, and also the some of the storm sewer improvements that need to be made out near East 3rd Street. We are going to be, well, Trevor is going to be able to certify the payment, the funds for that project, correct? We came to that conclusion at the Finance Committee meeting. And, okay, that's it for finance at the moment. The registrar and health report is included in the agendas. And the recycling committee, that meeting happened during a week where I was late for every single meeting I went to. So, but thank you to Donna and the rest of the committee for helping me out. I walked in at the end of a very short meeting. The weight of the, we discussed, there has been some discussion about whether or not we're going to do the shredding event again. And it turns out that the weight of the shredding, of all of the shredding material this year, far exceeded any other year. So it makes sense to at least try and put the effort forth to be able to do that again. And we'll work harder and we'll try and work earlier, hopefully, or whoever is there will work towards doing that. The bags are available at the recycling center. The recycling center is open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The bags are for recycling of leaves, and they're not, Donna, they can't use light brush, right? They have to wrap that up. Yep, yeah. It's just leaves. So, as far as Mr. Lane's questions on the pedestrian improvement, the pedestrian safety improvement meeting, I'm going to defer. Jay, what do you think we should, when do you think we can have that meeting?
As there was an earlier question this evening regarding the payment of bills, we have received the preliminary plans for the pedestrian improvement project. Trevor, what is the current timeline that we anticipate being ready for the public session?
So we have to submit those plans to the DOT, and once the DOT is okay with what we're presenting, then we can have the public information meeting. So imagine within the next, say, 2 months, we should be able to have those meetings.
Great. And as far as the 25-mile-per-hour signs, we're still beholden to the county for those, are we
Yeah, I
not?
spoke to the county yesterday again, just for an update. The purchase order has been in for months now, and it just hasn't been installed yet, so I continue to follow up with them, and we do also have a all-encompassing letter for the other items that we've been in discussions with them, as far as the signage and the striping and the speed limit signs. I did notice today that the county was out along the Henry Hudson Trail, I think at the end of, I think it was Waverly, starting to clean out the ditches. So they did go out there and start cleaning out the ditches and the pipes along the trail. We did put that request in after the last council meeting.
Great news. And the markouts for the sewer and water on First, does that have to do with what they're doing up and down?
That I'm not sure about.
Okay.
Unless it was down by Walnut Street. Yeah, if it was by Walnut Street, I know the county was doing the water main work out there, and the developer at 333 First Street is gonna be starting their utility work shortly.
I noticed they marked it out up the street too, which is probably a necessity if they're gonna be doing work down on the eastern portion of it, right? So it probably is all interrelated, but, you know, we can probably find it. We'll assume that it is until we find
I know
out
what it
differently.
is.
Okay, it is.
It is sewer markouts, and it is for 333 First.
Cool. Thanks, Chief. Four-way stop sign at First and Broad, was that part of any of the, that wasn't part of the ordinance that we just approved, right? That would still need to be discussed and approved, if we were to do that?
That would be in conversations, well, first of all, it would be county,
Right.
right? So, it was, we did not move forward. Trevor was collecting a bunch of different ones to present to county, including,
The three-way
Maple,
stop.
Maple and, Green Grove. There was, when we did the ones, we just did the local ones that we wouldn't need county approval for.
For sure.
There were two that abutted to Green Grove when we just did the recent ordinance change, but they were already existing on Green Grove. We were adding them new on municipal, so we did not have to go to them.
Does the county road extend, it doesn't extend all the way down Green Grove, right? It stops at Maple and turns, or no? It does. So anyway, I know we've got those taken care of down at that end, but we can probably do something on our own there if we need to, but.
So anyway, so to
Yeah.
answer your question in complete, Trevor was keeping a list of all the different ones with county, so that could go, whether we put it in with the TAP improvement, or I think that was an original request with the TAP first walkthrough.
Correct, and that is something that we will be including in our letter to the county.
Okay, thanks, I think I covered everything. Thanks for letting me serve you folks.
Councilwoman McDermott?
Good evening, thank you, Mayor. So first, with the KBBC, we actually delivered 350 Keyport cash for the 5K, and we also did 125 for the wellness walk, which is a pretty good successful event. And we also gave Keyport cash for the Scarecrow contest, which is part of the Friends of the Library organization. So we gave up to $300, $100 in 3 brackets. $300 each, total $300 worth of Keyport cash. And then we also gave, for the municipal committee, as part of a partnership with the school during the open house, the public schools open house, we also provided $50 worth of Keyport cash, which is going to be distributed on the 28th of October in efforts to build more outreach for kids and parents to engage and see what programs they would want to see with the Municipal Alliance Committee to partner with the school in delivering services for those off the grant that we have. And also working with the police department on implementing some of those as well, as we have a good lead program there. Ballots were sent out, so I guess by next November, we'll have an update on who's the 2022 KBC board members. Regarding the MPP program, the floodgates were installed and the new gate was repaired. That actually occurred while the borough administrator was on vacation. There is a pending issue with signage. Before we can utilize a sign, we actually have to put some signage on it. To like flashing lights and things like that. So that is actually at Public Works. And I've asked for follow-up from the borough administrator to get that done. So if you want to go ahead and just give me a quick update on that. It's been already communicated out to have them go ahead and put the signage on so we can go ahead and utilize it. Because without that, people will run over it and mess it up again.
Yeah, I don't have an update on the status of the installation of the signs and lighting.
Okay. The other factor, we did receive 90% of our MPP funding for year 2 of the plan, and we received the remaining 10%, which is $125,000. The total is $125,000. Will be done at the end of the year 2, which is expected to happen next July of next year. Sorry, all the way up to December 31st of next year. So we have about a year left in year 2. Initial plans have been done with initial planning, so again, we are not beginning any projects yet on that, but there's some planning that's done with that. We did have representatives from the DCA come in today, had a walkthrough with the borough administrator and the coordinator, and from my brief discussions with the coordinator, seemed to have, was a good successful meeting with the state, and I'll have more updates when I meet next month, but I give everyone an update next month. But I do think that I personally could attend because of work obligations, but I think that was a great thing to have the state come in and actually see firsthand what the MPP program has done for the borough. And based on information, it was well received. And the committee continues to meet. The library construction committee project, at this point, I know we submitted the grant. I don't know where it is with the finance and the grant committee. So that's the last update I have for that.
Thank you. Councilman Davidson?
Thank you, Mayor. For the building department, we had number of permits issued for plumbing total for the month of September were 8. Electrical total permits issued were 15, and building totals were 18, and 33 landlord registrations. As you can see from the agenda, we are hopefully going to be approving a new hire for code enforcement. I had the pleasure of sitting in on the interview, and I think he'd be a great fit for our town. He is a local person, and I believe that he's really going to be dedicated to the position and work hard for us. As well as the electrical subcode official. Hopefully we get to approve that tonight, and again, the sewer jet is to be approved. We've waited a long time for that and look forward to that getting out there instead of hiring other contractors. And part of previous conversations were that there is training associated with the purchase of the sewer jet, so that has been discussed previously. As for now, that is all that I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McNamara.
Thank you. I'll start with the senior center. There's so much to report there. We're really getting a lot going for seniors. The Skipper bus is operating again. It's out on Tuesdays and Thursdays and does the loop between 10 and 3. There's movies on Thursdays. This Thursday we have Hotel Transylvania. Next week is Dracula Dead and Loving It. And the first Thursday of each month they have charades before the movie. Line dancing is back on Wednesdays. Ceramics is a new offering that began October 4th, and they're now offering Spanish lessons that began this week, and that will be once a week on Mondays. The monthly COVID testing and vaccines continue to be offered through the Monmouth County Health Department. There was one held last week, and there are 2 more during the balance of the year, November 10th and December 15th. And they're held late afternoon, early evening from 4 to 7 at the senior center. Also, there's flyers up at the center and the senior residences informing seniors that they can get their booster shots at Save-On. Some comments on building and grounds. Looks like the floor in the dining room should be installed in November. And it's reported that members are getting a little bit more comfortable returning to the center, so there's more activities happening in person. November is re-registration time for Keyport residents. They are having a holiday party on December 9th, and that'll be at Town and Country. And Atlantic City trips will be returning in January, so there's a lot going on there. Recreation. This Saturday we have Trunk or Treat. That'll be set up at Fireman's Lot, followed by Hocus Pocus by the gazebo. They'll also have pizza for the kids there. People interested in having their car decorated, their trunk open, you can register through Facebook, or you can email or phone, information's up on Keyport Online. The 5K, after the race, the report was 294 runners finished. Come on, folks, we need 6 more next year to get that. I'm not volunteering, but there's plenty of people here that could do it. But big thanks to all the people that made that event possible, beginning with obviously Nancy Jones and Mary Holt, who really helped out a lot. All the other recreation and borough volunteers, Keyport Field hockey players, DPW CERT, fire department, police department. I mean, there's really a good turnout in terms of support for that. The ball fields currently have been maintained by the Keyport School District, which we truly appreciate, and they're getting us some information regarding some infield fill that we need at Cedar Street. And as we get ready for the November meeting, we anticipate discussions about programming for 2022. Obviously, the last 2 years have been really tough. Summer programs got canceled, things like that. So, getting excited about what kind of things we can offer. I'm just going to add a Board of Health item, because this is one of my favorites. The Rubies vaccine clinic, which is free. If you have a dog, you really should take advantage.
And cat.
Yeah, oh, okay. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, for years I would go to the vet and they would tell me every year, you know, $50 or whatever. And I went in one year to do my license and Donna said to me, "What, are you crazy?" And so ever since then, I get my free one, and I can get a 3-year one. So you certainly should take advantage of that. That's Saturday, November 6th from 10 till noon over at DPW, Beers and Francis Street. Green Team, as mentioned in the last meeting, the borough received communication from JP declining reappointment for 2022. So we'll have to figure out, you know, who wants to step up there, what that looks like. We do have a meeting next week that we haven't really had much communication since submissions were put in 2 months ago. Mr. Lane, I'm assuming you directed the OEM stuff at me because we've had conversations about the OEM manual as it relates to Green Team, but I think it really probably falls more under the OEM coordinators. But I will say that in some recent conversation with the fire department chief, because I garden in front of his house, I found out that there actually are three whistles, the other one being here. So one at Consolidated, one out on the highway, and one here. So yes, there's not full coverage. I know for myself though, when I hear it go off, I at least am aware that trucks may be coming through. But I also understand that as the whistles have been declining and breaking, things like that, that they're choosing not to repair them. So it may be something that just goes away naturally on its own. And Mr. Merla, I know Councilwoman Davidson mentioned the jetter, but even in the paperwork from the company that we're getting the jetter from, it mentions on there that training is included. It doesn't go into real detail, but it's in print on that document. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The mayor's update, attended a meeting with the American Legion, and went over the award and asked them, because they were all invited to the ceremony that's going to take place on Veterans Day, but over in Homedale to receive the Value Our Veterans Award that the municipality has earned. They also annually have a Veterans Day ceremony in front of their lodge every year, and I have not received it in writing, but they probably still will have some members stay here and some members go over to the Homedale ceremony. So once that's confirmed, we will put out an announcement and help them with that like we do each year. I participated in our bi-monthly Board of Ed collaboration meeting with Jay. Attended the KBBC meeting. Went to Coffee with the Cop, which was very successful. Thank you, Chief Torres, for putting that together. Held a meeting with Councilman McNamara, Jay Delaney, and the director of the Senior Center. With great information and enlightening information came back from that meeting. including some financial conversations that should probably happen in the future, without knowing that it's been a nonprofit advisory board that's been funding the events taking place there, not our own borough budget. So that's gonna have to be a conversation moving forward. Held a, oh no, I actually have a couple questions now. I guess we're on month of 17 now, asking for the meeting with Ann Barrick. How's that going?
Not well. They have not replied to numerous inquiries since our last meeting.
Can you include me on some of those emails, and maybe
Sure.
I'll call them or something? And we have an update on the ramp for the stage.
The ramp has been ordered. We do not have a confirmed delivery date at this time.
And how about the swing set for Kearney Street Park?
We did not make a final selection during this cycle. We expect to do that. There's really no specific date, but I'll bring that back up to do.
Thank you. And the information that I've been requesting for a few months on FEMA submission for any other additional expenses incurred from the pandemic since January 1st to July 4th.
I have a preliminary report that I'll provide you within the next week.
Do we have a date of when that submission needs to be in?
I don't have the date for that.
And the tennis nets, have they been installed?
The last time I checked, they had not been. We had received the new stanchions.
And piggybacking off Mike Lean's question and Councilmember McNamara's, the OEM plan, do we know where we're at with that?
That is actually ready to be submitted to the council at our next meeting, or for authorization to submit it to the county at the next meeting.
And the last one is, Councilman Good, I know you've been filling in for the Library Board of Trustees, thank you. I know I saw today that there's new hours posted for them on their social media pages. So can you work with Jay or the parking committee or Mr. Kelsey? Because there's a designated parking spot outside of the library for the library according to the library hours. So if those have changed, we probably need to change that and whatever we do in updates for the parking.
Actually, I had a conversation with the library director today regarding that. I expect to receive that information as to what the new hours are. I'm not aware that they have been posted publicly, but we did have some discussion and are trying to determine. It appears that that sign is more informational than regulatory, but we...
Hence why I kind of leaned back to Mr. Kelsey to see if he was even aware of that for his parking committee inventory list.
Yes, I found it this weekend. So.
Okay, so we're all on top of that, that's great. All right, thank you for those updates. Next we'll go on to the consent agenda.
Mayor, if I just may, the reason for the extended library hours is that the library director hired another librarian, so now...
Through a grant, right?
I'm sorry?
Through a grant, right?
I don't think so. I think it's just part of their budget that they budgeted for, so that way there'll be more time. So it'll be good.
If it's the pleasure of council, I know there was some conversation on items on the consent agenda already. I don't know if there's any further conversation. R216, 21 seem to have some questions. I don't know if anyone else has any others, or if anything needs to be tabled.
Mayor, I don't have an issue with the agreement in terms of the attachments, but I don't think that we should let them start construction at 7 a.m. That seems a little early. And if I remember correctly, they started earlier on, I think, moving dirt around too. So I'd like to suggest that on page 8, that we move the time up to 8 o'clock in the morning, that they can't start before.
I think the borough code is 7.
Good for the borough code, but...
I'm just saying they could come back and possibly challenge that because the borough code is 7, right, Jay?
Actually, I don't know offhand. I'd have to check to see what the construction hours are.
Well, then, we should definitely look at that too, because...
Are they gonna be driving piles in this project? I can't remember. I think they, huh? I believe
They will be driving by.
Yeah,
Starting from
maybe we can, maybe we,
By
Maybe
3:30,
they
First
start
Street,
at 7
they've
in
been
the morning.
doing pilings since 7 AM
Yeah.
on Walnut and First.
Yeah, so I don't think we can really control that.
I mean, it's a great question, maybe we can look into it. So if you want, do you want to table it so we can see if we could add that in there?
Sure, looks like they waited a couple years, we might as well give them an extra couple weeks.
Hey, can we, if we're gonna table this, can we add, not the other supporting documentation in here?
Certainly.
So we can have full packet for anyone who was not here by this vote.
So I would need a motion to table 216 if that's the pleasure of the
Motion to
board.
table
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one other thing on the PRC developers agreement. Bonding laws have changed in the last couple of years. I believe that was Mr. Lane's question. So now bonding isn't required for on-site improvements, only work within the right-of-way. So that would be why this is less than the Waverly project, which was under the old bonding laws. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for clarifying. And if there's no other items needing to be tabled or pulled, whoever motions to approve the consent agenda, if you can please include in the motion at 21821, the person's name is Edgar Beckton, and in 22321, it is not for public works equipment, it is for the fire department. Or fire apparatus.
I'll move it with those corrections.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the public hearing adoption of ordinance for excluding trucks over 4 tons and vehicles over the registered gross weight from Church Street and Osborne Street between East Front and Maple Place. Michelle, can you please read the ordinance by title?
This is an ordinance of the Borough of Freeport, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, amending Schedule 8, trucks over 4 tons and vehicles over the registered gross weight excluded of Chapter 7, Section 4.1 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Freeport.
Thank you. We have a motion to open to the public for this item only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is the public hearing for the ordinance for excluding trucks on Church and Osborne. Any members of the public wish to comment? Yes, Mr. Long?
George Wallen, 54 Second Street. How come Second Street isn't on the list?
Mayor, if I may, this amendment was precipitated by the work that's going on Church Street, part of the road reconstruction. We looked at a number of issues, not only the physical infrastructure, but also just traffic in general. It was recommended that Church Street be added to our list of truck restricted locations. That discussion also then extended to include Osborne Street. I'm not aware of any discussion or request for Second Avenue to be included.
Do you have a list in front of you of all the streets?
I do.
Could you tell me what they are, please?
Yes, according to the existing ordinance, Jackson Street between Main and Broad, May Street, the entire length from Washington to Maple Place, Monroe Street between Broad and Atlantic, Perry Street, the entire length from Maple Place to Francis Street, Pershing Place, the entire length, Raritan Avenue, northbound only, St. George Place, the entire length, St. Peter's Place, entire length, 3rd Street between Atlantic Street and Fulton Street, and Washington Street, northbound only.
Well, my question would be then why St. George and Pershing? Neither one of them are really, but how can I say this? See, the problem would be if something happens on First Street opening up the street, development down there, all that traffic, including buses, come on Second Street. And for the life of me, I don't understand. And those trucks, as I guess the chief would know, some of them are speeding down this street also. The other day, there was, I think, 7 dump trucks that I counted.
The only thing I can suggest, I don't have any knowledge or information in front of me regarding the history on the establishment of this restriction on other streets. So I don't know why, for instance, 3rd Street may be on it, or St. George Street, I'm sorry, St. George Place or St. Peter's Place. But if I'm to understand your request, that's something that could be reviewed as far as both the physical layout and whatever traffic patterns exist.
All right, greatly appreciated, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Anyone else have any commentary or questions on this public hearing? Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, since you're taking the time and effort to update the ordinance and spend money on ordinance, seems to me you ought to review the criteria for selection of streets and cover all the streets that meet the criteria. So why, to reinforce what Mr. Walling said, I mean, Second Street is a parking only on one side of the street. You're gonna have these 4-ton trucks running right up the curb, in cases 10 or 15 feet from a front door, which is a condition you have on First Street too. And so you really ought to take time to figure out what the criteria is that got these streets on the list, and expand the list to cover all the streets that need this protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Have a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dialogue from the governing body?
I have a question. Second Stone, well, do we know if Stone Road allows that weight on? We don't, right? We wouldn't know. You think so, Chief?
I think so, I think it's county.
Because I was gonna say, if Second is landlocked by restrictions, it wouldn't necessarily make a difference, but it's not. If Stone Road is, but what happens is if it's, Atlantic is included on that, is it not? No, it's not. So it's
I was
not.
being woken up by a car carrier at 4:27
Yeah.
yesterday morning.
Well, no, I mean, yeah. Okay.
Mayor, I have a quick question, quick question. So, let's say this gets approved. Who's in charge of notifying all the logistic companies that put it in their GPSs for the trucking companies to know? So you have Garmin, you have, trucks only, cars only. So we can put this in place, but is there a way to notify all those companies to say, this is now in place to minimize, it's a little bit of work on the police, because if they don't know that it exists until they get into town, it's like a wild goose chase.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any process to provide notification. Eventually, the word does get out through, from my own experience with, Google Maps and changes that do occur and miraculously get updated somehow.
I do agree that, that process will kind of slow it down, or like, people will learn. I also, in Homedale on Laurel Avenue, there's that low-lying bridge, and I would say probably at least once a month or so, give or take, there's always a truck driving into it, because word gets out, but it doesn't get out to everybody. So, I guess maybe can we look into the possibility of, if there's one main logistical company to put this out on, and then it filters through all of it? I mean, do you have any ideas?
I think notifying the businesses would be a great thing, especially the ones that we know receive the deliveries. A lot of times that's how we address those big issues, so I think that's a good start. I think it's a real good point.
You know, that bridge in Homedale actually does literally have a sign on it that says
there's signs all over.
Oh, I know, I know, but it
Notifying
doesn't
them
stop
doesn't,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, but if there was a road, if there's something on the street on your GPS, so when I drive my, I'm sorry to.
I think it's a crazy.
I
No,
drive my
I'm
RV,
just
it's
trying
on
to
truck
think
routes
of-
only, and when it says a truck route, then I know I can't take that road, cause my height exceeds a bridge or tree or wires.
No, I'm just curious, cause it's like, can't you see the big sign that says?
So I have a question.
Councilwoman Pacheco had her hand up.
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay, Councilman McDermott.
So are we gonna put this on the borough page as an announcement, as a significant traffic change or something?
We can.
Okay,
I mean,
so,
generally, we would not, but we can do a little public information blurb regarding the change.
and it just let me know, and then we could also put that on a KBBC website as well to help support this.
Please, page 2.
I just have another recommendation. If you are gonna go to the businesses, maybe having a diagram of a colored or something, like where the streets where they can't go around, because again, and then they could distribute that to the respective truck drivers or businesses or entities they deal with.
I heard Trevor really loves making color-coded maps.
You know, red line across the street you're not supposed to go through.
We can put something
I mean, again,
together.
the easier you make that, if you provide that also to the mayor and myself, we could also put that on respective social media pages. For the businesses.
I'm sorry, are we gonna consider the second between Stone and Atlantic prior to the next meeting? To be included on this, or would that be done separately if we're going to include it or discuss it?
We would have to reintroduce it.
That was actually my question.
Yeah, I would recommend if there's consideration of the council to review Second Street and include that on this restricted, as one of the restricted streets, it would have to be done as a separate ordinance at this point. Otherwise, this would be held, this would basically die and start all over again. My recommendation would be to move forward with this, and if it's to be further supplemented, that be done separately.
I don't disagree with that. I think that the points brought up by Mr. Walling and Mr. Lane are good points. We should probably do a review as the administrator stated. This was precipitated. This was, launched because of the construction that's going to be going on Church Street and what's been brought up by the residents of that area. I think it's probably not a bad idea to revisit, the rest of some of the other streets and areas in town to see where we might restrict.
It was also brought up and studied, right, for Church and Osborne.
It
where We
was.
actually witnessed the tractor trailers not being able to even turn around, and they
Yeah.
were delivering to many of the people and not being able to make the turn, so.
And we're not gonna be able to do every street. I mean, I would love, honestly, to see it done on my street, but my understanding is Beer Street actually has been designed to provide for that. There's extra macadam or concrete or structure underneath that road to provide for that. And that would be why, as a side note, the Saint Streets are on there too, because these trucks are not allowed to turn from Beer Street onto those streets or onto Walling and Pershing. So I agree with the administrator's assessment. Let's take care of this, and then we'll go from, we'll do a further study and see how that goes.
So if that's the choice, I would need a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Patapos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
I need a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as adopted.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Introduction of ordinances, ordinance 1, refunding bond ordinance to realize interest cost savings for the borough. The clerk will read it by title, and then if Jay, you can please give a better explanation when she's done.
This is a refunding bond ordinance providing for the refunding of outstanding general obligation bonds by the Borough of Keyport, appropriating $1,050,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,050,000 refunding bonds of the borough to finance the cost thereof.
Mr. Delaney, can you please elaborate on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a recommendation from the borough CFO. Specifically, this relates to a bond issue dating from August of 2011. We are now 10 years into that bond issue, with 5 years remaining on the pay down of those bonds. At the time of issuance, this issue totaled approximately $3 million, and at this time, that balance has been reduced to $1 million. As we reach the 10-year stage of this pay down, these bonds are now what is referred to as callable, which allows for them to be refinanced. These bonds currently carry interest rates from 3.5% to 4.5%. It is the recommendation and the calculation that has been performed by the CFO that refinancing, or refunding is the official term, but essentially refinancing these outstanding bonds at this time will generate savings of approximately $75,000 to the borough over the remaining 5 years. This provides for no new money, with the exception of we are including $50,000 of the cost of the refunding process. Even including these costs of $50,000, it is expected that there will be a net savings of $75,000 over the course of the remaining 5 years.
Mayor, and if I can add, if you don't mind, the CFO that we have, we're blessed to have the CFO that we have in town. He's constantly looking for opportunities like this to save, and this is not the first, and hopefully won't be the last time we'll be able to do this. Hopefully interest rates will remain low, and we'll be able to move forward with things like this in the future as well. And thank you to the administrator and to the CFO for working together on this. For those of you that know the CFO's name, it's Tom Fallon. I think it's worth mentioning.
Okay, have a motion to introduce?
Motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Patapoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
There's a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as introduced in the Asbury Park Press for a public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstained? Second ordinance introduction this evening is establishing land use regulations and licensing requirements for cannabis business. The clerk will read the ordinance by title.
This is an ordinance to amend and supplement chapters 25 zoning and 5 licenses of the Code of the Borough of Keyport, establishing land use regulations and licensing requirements for cannabis businesses.
Any discussion before a motion? Councilman McDermott?
Hi. So I have a question on the mapping on the bottom left side. So I'm looking visually down here, where it's pointing out residential, but that is also surrounded by, the back of that area actually has very prominent residential homes. So the question, my concern there is the distance of residential with there. So I don't know if that needs to be looked at a tighter level, on mapping of that. The other question in the ordinance, it notes documentation, supporting documentation, it would be the permit application, etc. There's nothing supplied in this, and I do have concerns about having an ordinance without supporting documentation on this, because we run into issues where we develop forms after the fact, which contradict our ordinances many times. And based on everything I've listened to, even when I did my visits locally to a dispensary, the key thing is having that checklist thoroughly understood and vamped up, and ensuring that the borough has a tight control of this is actually more important and essential. The municipality is the one who really controls how things are run. So I have concerns with proving this without supporting documentation. And the concern with the mapping, near residential zones. maybe residents are not aware that this is gonna happen near the residents.
Can I ask a question of reference, if that's okay? Where was, I was running to the
sorry.
map when you said,
It's over here, it's down in the.
oh, it's,
Yeah,
it's
where
in
the
the,
next,
it's in the heavy industrial
yes,
zone?
yes. There's actually two pretty prominent.
Okay. Yep.
Anyone from the committee or Ms. London, do you have any questions, any answers for?
Regarding the actual applications, we will be getting more direction from the CRC in the upcoming weeks and months. They had a very large, another webinar, seminar, whatever it was, I think it was just last week, and something else is happening this week. But they're working on those things. I don't know of anyone that actually has the specific applications yet, because everyone is still, this is still an evolving area, and I would assume that the League of Municipalities, if not the CRC, will be providing at some point sample applications so that they are fairly uniform throughout the state, so that each municipality isn't doing something a little different than the others with respect to the application. So I would not be that concerned with not having the actual application in place right now, and to move forward with the ordinance, I think is fine.
I just have another question. I know we talked about micro
Businesses.
businesses. So it wasn't very clearly outlined. I just want to make sure we kind of changed some of the verbiage a little bit. Did we note that one of those licenses can be micro?
Yes, that's right here.
Okay, all right, I just wanted.
No, you said it wasn't outlined, but.
No, I said it was listed, but I just want to make sure legally it covers this. That's, she was going to give us some feedback on that.
Yeah, I believe I sent an
Yeah.
email to everyone.
Good, okay. And my other question is the mapping of the industrial next to residential.
Mayor, if I may, just so that we're clear, the mapping that was provided was prepared through the Borough Attorney's Office and is informational. It is not technically part of the ordinance, but it is intended to provide the governing body with a physical depiction of the various locations.
Correct. Right, this is not an official Trevor map.
Right.
It's more of a legal map that was done by my office, just to give you an idea when you look at the borough as a whole, where everything is going to be, district-wise. And you will have, through your planning process, some control over where things are going to be, you know, where the facility is going to be. Because it's going to still have to meet criteria from the planning board perspective.
Can I just ask if this does get introduced tonight, can this please be posted on the homepage of the website? I had asked for that to be done, including the map, the draft written across, or whatever, not
Or
official,
unofficial.
on the homepage and posted on social media so that this is easily accessible. So when the public hearing is here, everyone has had a chance to review this, please.
In the conversations we have talked about the application process and having more information. I, for one, would love to have more on there. So I understand the state's gonna have their application, but as a municipality, are we gonna have the ability to tighten up on that? So are we
Sure.
able to ask for more or less, whatever the situation may warrant?
Yes.
Okay, so if in that instance, would it be prudent to have a sample application that we can take from another municipality that's similar to Keyport's, maybe in Massachusetts or Colorado, that we can utilize as a sample until we get the finite details from the state?
We can look into that. I don't have a problem with that. We can see, I don't know if anyone in New Jersey has one yet from those municipalities that have adopted ordinances already as detailed as these. We can check on that, and I could also check out of state just to take a look. There will be some differences between what's done out of state versus here. So I'm not sure how. I think they'll be helpful, but only to a certain extent. It will be more helpful if there's there's something in New Jersey that's already been done. And, I'll also reach out to the league, because I'm pretty certain that they will take the lead and try to put something together that's uniform. Again, but you can, because they did right now do general ordinances that are helpful for each municipality, and then you can tailor them depending on your particular need. So I can look into that.
So as those details come out, then we would have to amend this and then.
No,
They
this
just
is
get
broad
tacked on,
enough
they just get
that,
tacked onto it.
right, this is broad enough that whatever you do in your application process, it should not affect your ordinance.
I think that word broad actually scares me a little bit more. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time, and we've talked about the application process too. So I guess, I don't know if we introduce it and see how it rolls out and then go from there, if we can get anything. Well, we can't introduce it if we're gonna add anything to it, is that correct?
Now, you can introduce it, I mean, you could pass this ordinance and at some point amend it if there's a need to amend it.
But with regard to the application itself, we don't need to specifically change this ordinance if we come up with a list of whatever we want. It's more, that's going to be the form that the application for the borough is going to take. So that could be developed over the next couple months, really at any point.
And I would be concerned with adopting a application now without having the CRC give us the guidance that we, more guidance in that area. Because you'll most certainly have to probably amend it if you are doing something now.
So if we include the application, we could be limiting ourselves?
Well, your application shouldn't be part of your ordinance anyway. The actual application, you are approving the ability to have an application to be completed by those people who are interested. You are not, it shouldn't be part of, the physical application shouldn't be part of the ordinance.
Councilmember Nachner?
So I have a question. Who then is ultimately responsible for the creation of the application that, I guess, the borough clerk would use? Does that come before council, that application?
Typically, that seems to be an administration issue with the borough attorney. I mean, obviously, if somebody in the council says we should include some handful of questions, then, but in terms of approving it, Jay's gonna be on the hot seat.
And I know I keep checking, but have you seen any start date yet for when the state will start accepting license applications?
They just, I think, finished up the medical marijuana, and that was their first priority. What I heard last week at the seminar that they did, that it's forthcoming within the next few months. So maybe before the end of the year. It's the next thing that they said they were going to do, the application process. That was the first thing they said at the start of last week's discussion. And there was I think 1,000 people on that Zoom. So everybody's anxiously waiting.
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling we'll see things almost till next year at this point. I know that the league is having their conference in November, and I looked at the schedule, and all 3 days, they have a canvas-related topic, and the Tuesday morning, they have the director, I think that's her title, from the CRC, and then the current head of the league, and I forget who the other person is, but going through a lot of recommendations for municipalities.
Yes, people are getting anxious, and they are waiting for more direction. But it is forthcoming. They are moving, unfortunately not as quick as people would like.
So the setbacks with regards to the valid concern of Councilwoman during the The setbacks are going to be established at the planning board level, correct? When they come up with, so currently, let me explain. Currently, commercial properties can build to the almost, if not to the property line, correct?
I think it depends where.
Okay. So the concern, and I share it, is that, you know, in the industrial district, okay, there's a good portion of that industrial district that backs right up into a neighborhood. However, the setback of the current buildings, for example, our DPW building, right, it's set way back. And to me, living in that neighborhood, that's really not, you know, if it was there, it wouldn't be an issue. But if it was right up on Francis Street or right up on Beer Street, it might be an issue with some residents, especially if it's a retail facility or, I don't know, you know, but if, you know, if there were certain setbacks, much like what we're doing, you know, the natural setbacks from residential that are occurring in the downtown area, my question goes back to, this isn't done here in the ordinance, is it? It's done at the planning board level, or no?
Well, you do have on page 4 going into 5 of the draft. You're identifying how far and the distance of a facility from, and you've identified childcare facilities, residential childcare, elementary schools, etc., all the various schools, and then churches, synagogues, temples, for other places used exclusively for religious worship. So you've identified these areas. Now, you can add more if you want to have additional.
I guess I interpreted those not as setbacks, but, I mean, I know it says it, but not as setbacks, but as distances. Setbacks to me is 6 foot from the property line to build, you know, 6 inches from the property line to build a fence. You can't build, you know, those are what I envision as setbacks. I'm most likely I'm wrong about that, but,
I think that would be the standard, the general setbacks are, you know, it has to conform to our standard zoning application, the zoning ordinance, sorry.
so over, say, over near Lupataton, okay? They can build all the way to the property line right there, which is actually the Lupataton Creek, it looks like.
Where, so you're asking on like on
Is it,
on
so,
an industrial, on
yeah,
an
on the
industrial lot?
industrial property, yeah.
Well, what can they do now?
I think the question with the zoning, if you're looking at the underlying zoning of that zone, the
Yeah.
question is, are they allowed to build to the setback of the structure that's permitted in that underlying zoning, is the question.
I actually understood what you just said. So, okay, so it's the zoning that establishes that particular distance.
Right, so I don't know, in the LI zone, is it a 25-foot front yard setback or 30-foot yard setback, but is there gonna be a requirement to permit further than what the current zoning is in each individual zone?
I mean, if, it could turn out that, I'm okay with introducing, but it could turn out that we do the fact finding there to find out what exactly the zoning is, and we get to the adoption phase, and then we have another discussion about that. Is that okay?
If we modify it, then it's not.
Well, if we have to modify it, right, but.
And when it goes to the planning board, my understanding is they're not gonna be changing anything, they have to
Right.
advise whether they feel it conforms to what the intent of the master plan is, so, then they'll send a letter of communication back, so I don't know that it's going in as a hearing to the planning board, it's like to change the plan, the master plan, right?
It would go for look for consistency.
Consistency, right,
Mhm,
that's what I mean, so, they're not having a public hearing, they'll be having discussion, I think amongst the board, is my understanding.
I mean, the other thing is that, just think, right now, somebody can put up a smelting plant, whatever, you know, I'd rather have a cannabis grow facility in
The grow,
industrial zone versus a smelting plant, but
the grow isn't, it's the traffic for the, retailer that,
Well, there's also traffic, it could be commercial traffic, just to get the material out of that facility, that
it
location.
wouldn't be as dense as, do you think it would be as dense as, you know, hundreds of people coming in to buy the retailer?
Oh,
I think
no,
that-
the traffic
you think
would be
the,
different.
you think the retailer's going into the industrial zone?
I have no idea. No clue.
But again, we're having discussions about, you know, trucks going into residential streets. Do we just, so, you know, there's another thing to kind of consider there too.
Well, they do it now, believe me, they do it now anyway, because they're getting to the, they're getting to
Yeah, we've had
this
many cold lines
industrial
fall
area.
because of that.
Okay.
Do we want to table this and they look into this further? Oh, I don't know.
My preference is we move forward with this.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
think
gonna go that
the
far.
questions, while I understand them, I think the application in and of itself should wait, and the setbacks to our standard zoning, I think is, if it's appropriate for a smelting plant to come and have, you know, the trucks driving in, I think that, what the setback from the residential is still going to be applicable.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
No, so I think that that's kind of taken care of with regard to, you know, the traffic intensity, if you're talking number of cars versus number of dump trucks coming through.
No,
I'm just using some extreme examples.
I
obviously.
actually, to be very candid, my concern was not the truck to traffic, my concern was potential smell and that kind of stuff was more my other side of this. And, you know, just to let you know, I mean, we kind of pulled it out at 75 Manchester. I know there's development coming in there, yes. But, you know, we kind of did, I think, a thorough job on protecting as best as we can other locations, other zones. That my point was, maybe it's something else we need to kind of consider to, or maybe just allow the public to come in, those residents, and share their perspectives on this. I don't know.
I think the smell has to
covered,
be
yes,
contained.
smell is covered, noise
Yeah.
is covered as part of the ordinance.
Can I-
That can be required.
Yeah, it's covered, but, so I just had one of those moments of clarity where this doesn't say setback, it actually does say distance, okay? So we can go ahead with this ordinance, and if the setbacks aren't acceptable, we can change the zoning ordinance, can we not?
So right now, you're making this a permitted use in specific areas.
Right.
That permitted use falls under the existing zoning once you make that a permitted use.
So if we have an issue with the zoning, that would be step 2, immediately following this, correct? We can have a discussion about the zoning and the specific zoning ordinance for these zones without affecting whether or not we move forward. That was,
Can you do the review, I'm sorry.
so I think that, you know, the order to be able to do it, this is exactly the way we should do it. We should do this ordinance first, and then we should look at, because we don't have a cannabis ordinance that approves the use. Why even go to the zoning ordinance to adopt or to change? So I think that's the way, my opinion is we should do it that way. We should start here, and then we should take a look at the zoning ordinances and the actual zone setbacks that are baked into those. We'll go from there. Trevor, am I on the right track with that?
If you do that, or you also have conditional uses in the ordinance, so this could also be conditional use, and you've set specific standards just for this use, and then that way, any zone that it's in, it has its own standards just for this permitted use. It's another way to look at it, instead of changing the zone for the dimensions of each zone of this is going to be permitted.
Just to clarify that, not to get too deep in the weeds, pun intended, is that the conditional use process adds an additional level of approval, because any variation from all of those conditions renders it a non-conforming use, which requires a supermajority vote when it goes to the planning board. I don't, from the discussions that the minimal discussions that have been among the whole council. We've never delved into that level of review, but I don't think it was anyone's intent that these would be anything other than permitted uses.
Right, I don't think at this point, making it a conditional use, which is, I'm a little more familiar with that, is the route I'd like to see us go. I think we can handle it within the, within the zoning ordinances. Is that kind of a distorted way of doing it, or is it an acceptable way of doing it?
I think either way, I mean, you're gonna be changing the zoning ordinance, so it would have to
Right.
be adopted again and go to the planning board for consistency.
Right.
It would be the second step to this
Either
process.
Right, okay, good.
Chief Torres, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't know when I'm allowed to ask this. I just want to know, I was reading over it, and I never know if I'm allowed to talk or not here.
Of course.
I'm still getting used to being here, so did we leave off parks and playgrounds on purpose? Typically when we have like a no, whatever, the drug zones or no high traffic area, we put on parks and playgrounds. Is there a reason that we left that off?
Well,
Specific language, parks and playground, I just see
I'll-
everything else, but.
I'll, to an extent, and my subcommittee members can chime in, but if we were trying to designate a downtown, we have a mini park right there, and any extension of 200 to whatever feet kind of takes away.
Maybe we use the word playground? Just something to keep it away, high traffic away from
Well,
an
then you look
area
at
where
where it
children
is,
are on the swing.
look at where it is allowed also then. Are there any playgrounds?
I mean, I have to really think of the map, but like Teresa Street, I know people always forget about that one, that's a playground. Even the skate park area, that's called like a ball field, but there is a playground.
We're not
There
up
are
there.
some areas that I would just,
Well, we're not up near the skate park.
or if we, in the future, we do put a playground in, then it's already included. If we have a section that maybe doesn't include one now, we're kind of ahead of the game. That was just my only question, why we left that language out. Was there like a,
Is playground a substantial change if we add it?
We haven't introduced it yet.
We can introduce with playground added.
Just so we're clear, we haven't hit a substantial
Yeah,
change
right.
threshold yet. That only applies to
When
to adoption.
You can add that now.
public playground?
I mean, I guess it's really a question of where would it be?
But I appreciate that,
Public playground.
public playground.
Well, why don't we do private playground?
Because then anyone that doesn't want it here, then we'll put a swing set in their backyard.
Mayor, just one other question too on the separation requirements. Is it distance from the structure?
Hold on 1 second,
Oh,
Sean.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Drew.
Is the distance listed from the structure or from the actual lot that the specified land use is on? I think that's an important.
Trevor, can you repeat what you just said?
Sure, I'm just trying to.
On page
read
4,
this.
number 10.
Says
Bottom of page 4.
no cannabis, this is, number 10 on the bottom of page 4. No cannabis business shall be located in the following distances from the specified land uses listed below. And it goes on to define the 3 different distances. I'm just wondering if it's from the structure on that property, or is it from the actual property that the structure is on? Just because you may have a church that's on a large property, and is it the lot line or the actual structure itself? I think if we could just define that a little bit better, that would, much easier to enforce at that point.
The intent was, from my end, was to pattern it after the ABC, which goes from kind of a door-to-door via walking. I believe that's how they use the language, but I'll defer to Leslie as to the exact ABC language.
I'll have to check.
Councilmember Pacheco has a question.
Exactly. I was looking at the map, that's why I was talking, Mayor and I. So, I mean, do we have an inventory of where some of these parks might be in relation to where these zones are? Because, for example, Cherry Street, we were just looking at the map, I don't think it's anywhere near where the actual zone is for retail or cultivation or whatever.
It's not.
Yeah, that's what I was like, is it? So maybe it might be worth just making like an inventory of the parks real quick and just seeing if there's any that are actually affected by.
You want my recommend? I would just recommend just playing it safe and put it in there for the future. It can't hurt a playground. I think you're totally safe with Teresa Street, but that was just my example as a playground that people forget about sometimes. But if there should come a playground in the future, you guys are kind of ahead of the game with that. That's just my fear, like any large amount of traffic with that type of.
It also in reverse prevents the building of a playground within that distance as well, so.
I mean, we don't also know that, there's a marina right next to 3 Street Park as well, so maybe we could start a new trend where people come in on their boats.
Sure.
Maybe that's a distribution center. Just saying, could be dock and dine, hot and dine, I don't know.
Dock and hot, dock and big, dock and big.
All right, so, obviously, members of the public, just so you're aware, again, as a reminder, this is an extremely, important topic, and the only way to have full dialogue legally is those meetings like this. So I know that was a lot of dialogue back and forth, but it's the only way that it can legally take place. So, now at this point, I need some direction, what the governing body's pleasure to do, so we can maybe move on to the agenda.
I'll say that I think that causes slightly more of a problem than leaving it out. If we add in the parks, because, the playgrounds, because what's the difference if, somebody can consider a park versus a playground? What makes a playground? Which is, do we have to have a swing set there? Is it going to be that maybe there's you have to have a slide and a swing set? A park, typically park playground, that they're, kind of an open space thing. But when you try to at least delineate a difference between a park and a playground, when you can literally say a ground where people play could be considered a park, I think it brings into more questions at this point. So, at least from my
Second point of, is accurate terminology for this? Is it the setbacks or whatever you want to call it? Is that what is it true intention with the ABC?
I mean, that one, if we're gonna say 250 feet from the front door of each as pedestrians walk, I mean, if we can add to it, I don't see that much of a problem. That's more of a.
If I may, just to follow up on the comments from Councilman Good, as I see it, in my mind, it's pretty easy to distinguish. I know legally it's not, but in terms of a playground versus a park, the only real playground I think that is potentially impacted here is the playground at Beach Park, which I think, if you think about it, it is separated from the general commercial district, which is a cannabis retail and delivery service location by the townhouses. So even without, figuring out what the measurement is, there's a physical as well as a visible barrier that's already there. So I don't know that there's any other parks or playgrounds, whichever term you want to use, that is otherwise impacted by the zones that are indicated on the map.
Did you include the playgrounds at the schools, the public schools?
Likewise, there's no retail areas located, from my reading of the map, that impacts the school playgrounds either.
I don't think we put anything near any retail areas or any areas near the schools. We did that, right? We're allowing some in the schools.
we're drilling down deep, can't we put a definition in?
Well, Trevor, is there a definition of a playground versus a park?
It's an improved area that is designed, equipped, and set aside for children's play.
So Main Street is considered, it's not considered a park, that's considered a ball field and playground and a skate park, well, skate park. So, oh, there's a playground, and there's a playground.
You're on a seesaw. Yes. No, is that in our parks?
In Main Street, it is a park and it does have a playground, so it kind of fits both.
My only concern is making sure we have clarity with the setbacks and stuff, that's my only concern.
You know, the other thing, if I may, Mayor, the other thing to consider is that the ordinance as drafted does provide for a limitation of only one, I believe it's the one retail in any of the specific zones. So you're talking about only a potential for one retail location in one specific location, as I indicated earlier, related to the playground at Beach Park. So I'm not sure that there's really any direct impact by leaving it as is and introducing it along those lines. In fairness, if there was any kind of intent to provide for a broad prohibition on a location within a certain X number of feet of a park or public area, almost the entire town would be eliminated by virtue of just the way the Henry Hudson Trail runs through the community, our waterfront, and the various park areas that we have scattered throughout town. And I don't think that has been any intent or discussion by the governing body to go quite that far in terms of a prohibition. And to follow the sort of the train of thought that Councilman Good expressed earlier regarding the ABC, the alcoholic beverage regulations, those restrictions apply to churches and schools only. So there's no prohibition, and in many respects, the state municipal licensing scheme that's being applied to the cannabis regulations is following that same model.
So the back of the Carney Street Park, is that why we didn't order a playground for that? Yeah. Because that would have got to the cannabis retailer, which is right off Main Street and West Third.
And again, depending on if there was any intent to include that kind of a distance.
I'm sorry, getting back to Leslie, is that a major, if we want to add playgrounds and define a playground, is that something that we can add and continue with the introduction, or then we would have to reintroduce it with that addition?
Now, we can add that now if that's the will of council and introduce it as amended like that. I was just looking, I have a Trenton cannabis ordinance, and I was just looking to see if there's anything that could help us in our discussion. They use the measurement from the subject property line to property line. That's how they defined it.
So is that something we need to specify in here, or we are because of the door thing?
I was just throwing that out, that's something that some other municipality is using.
Well, Trevor, Matt, you had thought, sorry, Councilman Good, you had thought that it was,
Well, from I believe the ABC ordinance.
Entrance to entrance.
Is the entrance to entrance, because I know when we were doing McDonough's second floor, the whole thing, it's like 200 feet exactly to the church down on East Front. And I just remember looking at that, it's literally, it's as you walk along the street line. I did Google Maps and you put the little person as they walk.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
And a playground would also be considered, so if we have a development that goes in, they have some green space, and the planning board requests that they put in their own playground there, then that would be part of, that would be a playground then. Yes.
Not a public playground. Not on borough property.
Not a borough property,
That's
so
what I meant
private,
when I
so that's
said
where
public
we wouldn't limit.
When I was, I mean, I'll defer to Leslie, but when I was saying public playground, I didn't want every single person to be able to then go put, because then what's the point of doing this if everyone's just, I mean, we might as well go on a swing set, so.
Did you know what Madeline did? Didn't they just do an ordinance? I'm looking for it now.
I don't see a definition of park or playground in the ordinance, so it would be, it's not a current definition.
Right, that's exactly what she was asking, that there isn't anything in there, but usually something like this would.
Even in our general ordinance, though, there is no definition.
And
Or
Carney's,
distance from.
Carney's more than, like, 50 feet. It's more than, yeah, it's,
If Miss London is looking for something.
Oh, no, I was trying to see if parks or playgrounds are in this one. I don't see it.
And the introduction is what we're sending to the planning board, correct?
Yes.
So we should clarify this not now, not at the public hearing.
Well, yeah, I think, exactly. I think that it opens up more questions than we need to. And I think that we shouldn't just kind of let this, ordinance that we pushed off for a little while to get the regulatory commissioners 2 cents on it, which we did. Over 70% of the Keyport citizens are looking. God bless you if that was a sneeze. That we're looking for us to, and voted to approve it, that we don't let it try to be the perfection undercut what could be considered a very good ordinance, considering that we're trying to define where kids play. So, I'm in favor of moving forward with introducing it. I think that if we want to amend the thing to say distances from door to door on number 10, I think that would be good.
yeah, I'm not gonna, after,
I would need a second, I have a motion on the
oh,
floor.
there's a motion? Sorry.
Didn't you just move?
No, I said I'd move, I'd look to move forward. I didn't realize that we were
I thought that was your motion.
done. I'll make the motion.
I apologize, Councilman Staples, go ahead and go, I thought that was his motion.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say that, we can probably take care of this, depending upon, how we move forward later on too. I don't see any parks within the zone, anywhere near the zones that we're talking about, so, playgrounds.
Then I'll make a motion to introduce this ordinance, one change of on page 4, number 10, to say no cannabis business shall be located within the following distances measured door to door from the specified land uses listed below.
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Fritopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as introduced in the Asbury Park Press for a public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstaining? Do I also have to have a motion to forward this to the planning board, or is that just gonna be by default, Ms. London? Have a motion to
Second.
forward this to the planning board for review.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain or no? Sorry. put that on there. Noted that. And can we, just due diligence, make sure this gets sent over to the planning board, first thing tomorrow morning to go out to members for review. Ordinance introduction number 2, establishing land use regulations and license sorry, I'm just kidding. I do not want to relive all of that, and I take that back. Communications by consent for approval, 1, 2, and the newly added number 3 for the fire inspection. Just want to clarify, we did, number 1 was carried from last meeting, we did have clarification on that. There was quite a bit of back and forth, but it was finally confirmed, thanks to our clerk for pointing out some records. And item number 3, the ordinance for the fire department requires an annual fire inspection, parade, and 2 drills per calendar year. So the parade is going to be rather short this year. It's going to be out of Fireman's Park and down American Legion Drive and at Broad Street. So I did communicate that when I received that information late this afternoon to Chief Torres. So it will not require as much police manpower as the traditional ones of going through downtown and over to the first aid, because there will not be an after reception afterwards. And then if the weather is not in favor, then it'll be going to house to firehouse for the inspections. So I just want to clarify the process on how that will be, and then that will fulfill the parade and the inspection for the fire department ordinance for the year 2020. And then I don't know if there was any communication or any dialogue that wanted to come forward on the bylaws from the Harbor Commission, or do you just want to do further review and have them here at the next meeting?
We said that we could make a motion to receive it and file it, but not to approve the bylaws, and then they would have to come back so we could review the bylaws and have discussion at a later time. Is that what we discussed earlier?
So in theory, we don't, in this particular commission, we don't need to approve the bylaws. We can accept them, but I believe the request from Mr. Litwack, who is the chairperson, is asking for us to have further dialogue at some point, because one of the questions in the question is about spending authority.
And it's a financial question that can be addressed either in the budget or in the near future in another way.
Well, no, it will be policy as to who, because that's been part of the issues with the planning, the Harbor Commission, is who can spend the money and how. So whether they have to, come to the council, or can they just spend it, and what the process is. So I think that's really also some of the guidelines they're looking for. Am I correct, Councilman McNamara?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, they're looking for a $250 expenditure,
Right.
For miscellaneous things, like when they have the snapper contest. Doesn't the ordinance allow them to do up to 500?
That's, I think, some of the things we want to go over,
Right,
right? So,
right.
and I know also from the snapper contest in the years past, they, the process has to be cleaned up, because they were purchasing all the stuff as opposed to doing it through the borough ahead of time. So, is that correct, Mr. Delaney? They're supposed to follow?
Yeah, all purchasing should be done in accordance with borough's policies and procedures related to purchasing.
So, my suggestion would be, if you guys want to invite them for the next meeting and discuss it with them.
I would like that.
Yes. Okay. Michelle, can you extend an invitation to them and put them at the beginning of the agenda, so they don't have to wait for every presentation, please? Thank you. Any other commentary on communications?
I just have a quick question. Do we know why the fire department wanted to move the inspection to November 6th?
Originally, it's the first Saturday of May every year, except we were still in a public health, so we couldn't have it. So they followed suit of what we did last year and moved it to later in the year. And that date was never defined in the request to move it.
One question. If there is a rain date, are we gonna receive the schedule of inspection? So that
There won't be a rain date, it'll happen that day, but I'll ask council and you guys to
This would be
circulate that.
instead of them coming to us in one place, we would go to them.
Right, that's my
She's
point
just saying,
is,
can you just circulate the order of houses?
These houses to
Yeah.
go to? Yeah, yes.
and with time, so then that way we can move.
Well, I think we would probably just all follow each other, but
Yeah,
anyway.
that's what I'm saying, yeah, I just.
As a matter of process, if we can go back to number 3, the Environmental Commission purchases plant plugs and trees on their own. Typically, they've done it in the past through the administrator without council approval because it was within their purchasing budget. Are we gonna make are we saying the Harbor Commission come back and ask for approval to purchase Killies?
I think that's some of the discussion.
But there's already precedent where the administrator makes that decision themselves, Jay. with the
Well,
environmental
I think, first of all, what you're referring to with the, if I may, what you're referring to with the Environmental Commission is different than what's been proposed with the Harbor Commission bylaws. There are two separate issues in terms of governing body approval versus following borough purchasing procedures and requirements, which essentially is that the expenditure of any public funds requires that those funds be encumbered prior to the commitment for the purchase being made.
Okay.
So in a case like the snapper contest, is there a petty cash fund if the day of they found out that they're short something and need to buy something? Is that how they would handle it?
There's a reimbursement process. There are a limited number of petty cash funds within the borough that are under the authority and responsibility of specific individuals, not positioned, but named individuals that have custody and control of that petty cash and a process for reimbursement through that through the petty cash fund.
Councilwoman Pacheco?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, so if I had to go buy bait for the snapper contest because we ran out, I would just put in a receipt to UJ. That's how I've been reimbursed for things like that.
That's correct. And there are thresholds for that, you know, it's nominal purchases versus the expenditure of hundreds of dollars.
I wouldn't do that, though.
But the other side to this, there's also cost savings, not paying taxes when you are going through the correct procurement process. Because when you are going to pay as a civilian, you may not have the tax ID exempt form, which means that we're paying taxes on merchandise that we shouldn't as a borough.
Not if the administrator purchases.
No, I know, what I'm saying is if civilians or not do it
Yeah.
for current process,
Yeah,
so.
we were just making sure that there was a false
Right.
state in the event that we ran out of bait at the snapper contest and we needed to go get it.
I mean, if
But obviously they
Right,
need
that's
to do it
different than
for-
buying everything for the snapper contest, it's kind of like, you know, recreation as well, right? Like that,
Yes.
we've gone away from all of that, in the last 2 years, so, I would need pleasure of everybody. Motion?
Motion to receive and file and approve as listed.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
No?
That's for communication.
That was for all of them. I thought we were holding number 4 to review, discuss at a later date with the Harbor Commission's invitation.
We're gonna receive and file, but it's not approval.
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I asked that in the beginning.
Thought you were just objecting to the wedding.
Gosh, no.
And
No.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have a motion to approve minutes of October 5th, 2021.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain or no? Next, we have reports, municipal clerk's report for September 2021, tax order sewer collector's report for September 2021, Board of Health treasurer's report for September 2021, building department monthly report for September 2021, municipal court monthly report for September 2021, and Key Court Fire Department PIOPR report for September 2021. Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, I stepped out, so that's next thing. Under new business, there's nothing on the agenda except my error of not reading the proclamation at the beginning of the meeting, which I apologize for. So I'll read it now. Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd to 31st. Whereas the Borough of Keyport values the health and safety of all its citizens, and whereas drug and alcohol abuse in the United States prevents millions of people from reaching their full potential at school, on the job, and in their communities. And whereas drug and alcohol abuse is particularly damaging to one or most of the valuable resources, our children, and a contributing factor in 3 leading causes of death for teenagers: accidents, homicides, and suicides. And whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to reduce the demand for alcohol and drugs. And whereas the red ribbon was chosen as a symbol of commemorating the work of Enrique Pique Camarena, a drug enforcement administration agent who was killed in the line of duty and has come to represent the belief that one person can make a difference. And whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to educate youth and encourage participation in drug prevention activities. It is the nation's largest and longest-running drug use prevention campaign. Whereas the mission of the Keyport Municipal Alliance Committee is to prevent alcoholism and to promote healthy, productive lifestyle choices, empowering youth and adults to better their community. And whereas the Red Ribbon Week campaign team promotes family and individual responsibilities for living healthy, drug-free lifestyles without illegal drugs or illegal use of legal drugs. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Borough of Keyport does hereby proclaim Red Ribbon Week from October 23rd through October 31st. And we call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, schools in the Borough of Keyport to demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing red ribbons and participating in drug prevention activities. Sorry about that, order being out of order. Any other new business or unfinished?
I have a question about the 5G ordinance, and this is I've asked this before, but we cover the status of telephone poles in that ordinance, correct?
The issue that was raised prior by Mr. Lane about the condition of the poles, we addressed that in the updated draft that is prepared.
Right, okay.
And the draft was just put on hold based on your
Right,
last
based on it.
conversation.
Yep.
Attorney's report?
Nothing.
Can I have a motion to open to public comment? But before we get that, because sometimes people leave at this point, just want to remind everyone to vote on election day. Motion to open to the public, 5 minutes max per person.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Kowski?
Andrew Kelsey, 29 St. Peter's Place. The parking lot, Church and Second Street, it's still gonna get paved as part of the project?
Yes, that was in the base bid for the award for Church Street.
Do we know how many spaces are going to be created?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but
Either 9 or 9.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
John Marola, 34 Broad Street. At the last meeting, it was brought up that the council was wavering whether or not to accept the donation of the mosaic benches. And it was discussed and no agreement was made. And it also was discussed about Art Society and Garden Club donations made to the borough. I have a question where the neighborhood preservation monies that are being spent in town, like the enclosure on on American Legion Drive that got hit and destroyed for the Porta-Johns that was purchased with NPP money. What is the town going to do now, since that is borough property once it was put in place? Is the borough responsible for replacing that? Is NPP responsible? Who goes after the car that hit it? Who goes after the insurance company? How do we get that fixed again? Because the one at the boat ramp, I reported to Nicole Hen 2 months ago, that was hit by a trailer, and that still hasn't been fixed. So what do we do, Jay? I mean, what do we do? Are these items that are being purchased by NPP, now they're borough property? What are we doing to get?
Does insurance cover it?
The floodgate was replaced, right?
Yeah, do you want me to address that, Mayor?
Yes, please.
First of all, if NPP is a program of the borough, they're purchased by the borough, installed by the borough, the items become the borough's property, they're constructed on borough property. The specific that you referenced, the enclosure along American Legion Drive, that was the result of an accident. There is a process for an insurance claim to be filed, and I'm not sure in that case. My recollection is that was, that if there was not a driver identified, I believe it was I'll call it a hit and run, although I mean,
No.
it was taken out, or maybe the one you're referring to is the boat ramp.
2 different incidents,
Yeah, okay. But in any event, there's a process for us to recover from our insurance company, less the deductible, and if there is a third party responsible, typically that is something that the insurance company handles through a subrogation of insurance.
So do you know if there's an insurance claim from the borough as of right now?
I believe there is. I can't tell you that I've seen it or, don't know the details of it.
Okay. The second thing was, it was brought up about the flooding, and there was a gentleman here from 3rd Street last week at the meeting, and it was flooding that we've never seen before on 3rd Street in Waverly. They were on Fulton Street today, just for a matter of record. It was at Waverly. They started on Fulton and worked their way towards Waverly.
Who's they, John?
They is the county of Monmouth.
Okay.
Cleaning the Henry Hudson Trail. In years past, there was a maintenance agreement with the county of Monmouth to maintain and clean those Henry Hudson Trail swales, ditches, and drains, and they used to come every year. So on record, if you check, there is an agreement, and I don't know if it expired or whatever, but I think as a follow-up to this, now that we're aware the county's in, maybe the borough should pass a resolution, enter into a contract with the county of Monmouth to maintain that, since it is county property. The third item I had, Mayor, is I keep bringing up, and it's a sore spot, is these streetlights. I would wish the council tonight on your way home, take a ride up Beer Street between West Front and Maple. Look to your left. There's 7 poles in front of 45 Beers that have been out for 7 months. There's 3 Jersey Central power and light poles between that intersection from West Front to Maple. 3 Jersey Central poles that have been out for at least 90 days. It's a senior high-rise building there. I mean, we all claim to, love our seniors, and, this is right in front of their building. It's very dark over there. It's very, very bad. And that 45 Beers should be held accountable to have those decorative lights on. And I keep saying it and preaching it. The other thing is, they mentioned the sirens at night. It's very easy to solve that problem. The sirens go off at night because it's the county dispatch that's dispatching it and the fire, and they set the sirens off. All we have to do is tell the county, don't do it. The last item, Mayor, is a follow-up to Councilman Good's comment regarding Waverly Street project. I really think it's upon us to ask Jersey Central Power and Light, did you tell the contractor or developer that you weren't going to put underground? Because just believing the contractor, not that he would lie to you, but just maybe as a follow-up. I was there today, all right? Last week they milled it, they paved it. 23 feet between first and second was just left. So I don't know why we just didn't do the rest.
Are you talking about the, where they put
Pavement.
where they put the straw down?
No. Well, I was there too. I'm talking about the actual pavement.
Oh, the
Instead
rest
of going
the
from
rest
first to second, they did 3/4 of the street and then left a quarter.
They stopped it there They stopped at their property.
Yes. And then the contractor told the resident on First, I spoke with her personally tonight, First and Waverly, the borough told the contractor, quote unquote, that to put it back the way it was. Now that, we had an opportunity to get that individual sidewalks and curbs. Okay, that didn't happen. But we put grass seed and straw. She at least had stone. That didn't even go back.
Trevor, can you please follow up on that, because that was something I brought up multiple times about what is gonna happen with that patch of property.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jay, are we gonna do that end of Waverly?
We do have plans to complete that. Had we had prior communication from the developer, we would have coordinated that more closely.
Yep.
That occurred with very short notice. As you know, I think most of the council is aware, that has been an issue that we have been prodding, and we actually threatened to go after the performance bond of the developer for that. And the prodding worked belatedly, but with very short notice.
What project is that in Waverly?
It would just be, it's a very short repair that would be done as part of our road budget.
Mr. Wallen, you have your hand up.
George Wallen, 54 Second Street. I want to thank Jay for taking time out of his busy schedule to ride around with me to look at the dumpsters that have been in my side for over 2 years now. Where are we at with those?
I actually obtained the information on any prior enforcement actions, and that is a high on the priority list for the new code enforcement property maintenance officer to address.
And he's going to be starting when?
As soon as the pre-employment process is completed, we expect it will be a few days.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane. I asked the question about the update on the air marine erosion and bulkheading status.
Mayor, if I may, you know what, I forgot. We did have a meeting with the Air Marine people.
Last week?
Last week. We did tell them, you know, address that issue. That was one of the items. Most of the discussion did kind of delve into the litigation, so I'm not permitted to kind of go into that, but that was mentioned that there was substantial erosion that they need to take care of, that it's actually exposing part of, I believe, the landfill portion. So we told them, I think, you know, personally, I think we got a little bit more of a song and dance, but I think we put forth the borough's position about we're not going to take it any longer, and, you know, we're at the end of our ropes with what they are not doing.
There is a borough ordinance that says I have to maintain my bulkhead and they have to maintain their bulkhead, and their bulkhead has been destroyed. And I provided Jay aerial pictures of the bulkhead and ground pictures of the bulkhead. Second item, the status of the process for resolving the inconsistencies between the different sections of the land use element, 25:19.4 and 25:1-18. What's the plan?
I do know at the planning board meeting, the planner and the engineer did relay commentary, so I don't know that because we haven't voted on the official minutes of that, so once we get that, then we could forward that to the governing body.
I have provided to Jay a binder that has all the documentation, had all the documentation in it, and multiple cases before the planning board. And so an ordinance adjustment is needed.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Lane, I think both you and I have had discussions. It is my understanding that the planning board reiterated that despite your opinion as to the discrepancy, that the ordinance is very clear as to what the requirement is. What you're requesting is a policy change in the implementation of parking requirements in what is currently an exemption that is provided under the ordinance. And that is a matter that is the subject of the discussion that took place before the planning board, and we're expecting a recommendation or the results of those discussions from the next planning board meeting.
So the plan is to get comments from the planning board?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my original request from the borough's planner and the planning board to review it and make a recommendation.
Needs to be resolved. The timeline for the introduction of the flood damage prevention ordinance.
The ordinance that at our last meeting, there was the most recent version of that ordinance that had been introduced but had not been adopted was distributed. The borough engineer was requested to provide updates. As it turns out, in the intervening several months, the FEMA, which manages the federal flood insurance program, has instituted a revised model that is presently under review, but it is it will require substantial revision of the ordinance that was most recently reviewed and introduced by the council. And in terms of a time frame, I expect that review will take about 45 days.
And if I put an offer request in, I can find out about this FEMA model, because my impression was we had operated on the latest FEMA model.
I think it was the latest FEMA model at that time that goes back to March of last year.
Right. So you say there's one update since then?
The model ordinance is on the DEP website.
Right. But is it since March?
I think August 12th, 2021 is the latest version.
So then what he's saying is that it needs to be changed.
Correct. Yes.
And not just changed, a complete rewrite from the last discussion that I think was before the council.
So then what was circulated last meeting would need to be changed.
That's correct.
So we're working on a change plan.
We are, and I had indicated we expect that'll be about 45 days to make those changes, go through the review process, and have it here for the council's review.
Just to comment on the statement about Fireman's Park lot lines. Trevor, I had the impression that you did a review of that and you did determine where the lot line was.
Mayor, we did do a survey of the entire waterfront park, so I'm getting that together and putting a memo together for Mrs. Delaney to take a look at.
All right.
So I'll have that within the next week.
Thank you.
And that survey was done probably a year ago or more. And I make the recommendation we get a paintbrush and paint the line once we get it resolved. Finally, I think the borough has an opportunity to get out in front on this terrible condition on the utility poles. And do you have any plans to call the telecoms and the public utility in to review the existing status of our poles? Mr. Gallo, before he left, had that as an action item and was going to work the problem.
I can tell you, we just fairly recently received received your report on the status of the utility poles on First Street.
Right.
Prior to that, we've been dealing with the utility pole issue specifically related to either abandoned or inactive telephone and cable service on an ad hoc basis. And that has proven very difficult. Typically, one utility will say, that's not our line, it's the other ones. We've had some moderate successes, but again, on an individual basis, dealing with specific property locations.
There's a nest of disconnected wires on more than 8 or 9 poles on the north side of First Street. And it seems to me you need to get all the telecoms into the room and call for it to be cleaned up and get ahead of the curve here. And I copied to all members of council that documentation on the survey on First Street. And it's not just First Street, I can assure you. So I asked the council to take some action on that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelsey?
Andrew Kelsey, 29 St. Peter's. I just would like to have a copy of that lot line survey, if any of it, there's any changes to what's existing for the parking committee. Shape files would work if that's available. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Graham?
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. A few things, as you all know, I'm surprised this wasn't brought up tonight at the beginning. You all know General Colin Powell passed away a day or two ago in relation to COVID-19 or whatever. I would urge this council at a future meeting, since he was such a great American and a great man, that they adopt a resolution honoring him, you know, paying tribute to his service for his service to our country and to our world. You know, and that's, in my opinion, he should be honored. He should be so honored. As far as the marijuana question goes, like I said, I don't smoke the stuff myself or do medical marijuana and stuff like that, but once the state of New Jersey, especially through the Cannabis Commission, finally gets their act together, you know, either craps or get off the pot on this, I would just keep it simple. Since you all have smoke shops in the borough and stuff like that, just simply restrict it to selling the medical or regular marijuana to the smoke shops in the borough, and that's about it. Maybe it's a simplistic solution, but it would eliminate a lot of what we have to go through as far as the parks and all that for the kids and everything like that. And like I've said also in the past, as far as enforcing driving while on marijuana, that should be treated as a drunk driving offense. And we have to be very careful with that, especially in regard to Chief Torres and the police department enforcing the law and stuff like that. And I brought this up before and everything like that, but just about every morning I walk this borough and I see the public sidewalks in this borough. Madam Mayor and Borough Council, they look like a disgrace. I mean, with cracks in them and everything like that. I mean, we have all these grants coming from Monmouth County and stuff like that. Why can't some of these grants go for improving our public sidewalks throughout the borough and everything like that? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stroud?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, that was great.
Jack Straub, 235 Main Street. Question for Ms. London. The KBBC election ballots went out recently. Did you have any involvement in the election process, the ballots being sent out?
I will review anything that the mayor or council provide to me for review.
So you were approached by the mayor or council, not by the board of KBBC?
I haven't had an approach by the board.
If there were discrepancies or problems before the ballots went out, wouldn't that have to be discussed with the KBBC board?
If you have an attorney, or the KBBC board has an attorney, so those questions would go before the attorney, not me. I'm the attorney for the town.
I understand, that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. So if there was a request from the KBBC board to look into things to their attorney, and then their attorney contacted you, and then you referred back to that attorney, that would be one way. If it came from the mayor or council to you, and then dictated back to the KBBC, that seems to not be the way it should have happened.
My communications, if any, were done with
At your request or his request?
at his request,
So the KBBC attorney asked for your input?
on certain issues, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to determine where, because I asked at the KBBC meeting and he wouldn't give a straight answer, where his request came from, whether it came from the mayor and council or whether it came from the KBBC board. So you responded to his request.
To general legal questions.
I'm sorry?
To general legal questions.
Okay. Question for the mayor. Back months ago, going back to early summer, you kept talking about things going on at the KBBC. You were waiting for some kind of a report. Do you have an update on the KBBC status, which had been tabled, and you constantly said that you were waiting for more information?
Sure. As you know, you were at the KBBC meeting last week, and it was finally announced that the reports that were being held for 9 months that we weren't able to obtain were finally able to be obtained by somebody and turned over to the financial company that was going to be reviewing them. So hopefully we have an update soon.
So the answer is no. So I'm confused. Someone was turning something over to the accountant, the KBBC accountant?
Correct.
So the KBBC, I thought you were waiting for something from the KBBC accountant.
The whole board's waiting for something from the accountant, but he couldn't do the job he was hired for because the bank statements weren't being given to him.
Given to him by who?
The executive board?
So what's the status of, you had specifically mentioned improprieties and things that you were trying to get to the bottom of?
A review by the accounting firm that the full board decided to hire
So the full board asked the accounting firm to do what specifically?
to review the last 2 years of records.
And when does that report due?
We would have loved to have it months ago, but they weren't getting the information to do the report. So it was confirmed last week's meeting at KBBC that the treasurer was able to go to the bank and get them and give them over to the accounting firm. So I don't know why there was a holdup in getting those to the accountant.
And what about the specific improprieties that you referred to a number of times?
Until I get the report from the accountant, I can't discuss them because I don't have them.
Councilmember Davidson, you and I had a discussion in July on the phone. You asked that we keep it brief, which we did. You said you'd rather discuss it in public, not in private, and we're in public now. Are you satisfied that the concerns that I raised back in July have been addressed?
In all honesty, thank you, Diane. I don't recall, I remember speaking to you, but if you're gonna ask me to recall exactly what we spoke about and how, I'm not going to comment, because I don't know, and I don't wanna get caught in anything, because I'm not at liberty to say, I'm not part of the KBBC anymore. I don't sit on the board. I attended one meeting for 30 minutes last week, as you saw, just because I was here. I don't have any other comments for, I don't know any other information, aside from what we had already discussed, which was, I honestly don't even remember the conversation.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to give you.
The recording of it, I'm sure.
No, I didn't record it. Although legally I could have, I did not. But I did take notes. And basically, my concern has been all along the accusations made by the mayor about the KBBC prior to this year, which of course I was executive director and then was removed. And allegations of improprieties which have been unfounded and unproven. And at the time, in our conversation, you said you had no reason to doubt the mayor. And I said, has she provided you with any information supporting any of these accusations? And you said, no, you hadn't, but you were gonna give her time. It's been 3 months, and you also said that if it was proven to be wrong, that you would apologize. And it's been 3 months, and still this cloud hangs over my head. I lost my job because people made accusations about me, which were untrue. And I'm just asking you if you're satisfied with the status of where this has gone.
I have no update on any status. Again, I'm not privy to it. I am not part of the KBBC. I don't sit there. I don't get the reports. I don't believe I even have to continue commenting.
No, I was just gonna say, you don't need to, this is a public comment, it's not a public badgering session. And I already
I'm not
provided,
badgering.
you are. She doesn't have any information, because I just said we didn't even get the information yet, so how could I have given it to the council?
She asked to have this conversation in public, not in private.
But my point is that obviously there's no updates if we don't even have the updates to give to the council, so.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Jack, you don't get to call
I have
who
a-
speaks next.
I have a question.
Sure, I'll allow you to speak, I'm sorry.
I can wait until after public session.
No, go ahead. If you have questions for Mr. Straub, but wrap it up soon, please, because his time is way over.
I'll wait until after.
Other people were talking, as frequently you mention when someone goes over 5 minutes.
I'm gonna wait until after
Okay,
public session.
thank you.
Any other members of the public? Yes, Mr. Womack?
Harry Womack, 52 Carney Street. I would be remiss if I just didn't come up for a minute to add to Mayor Merle's comment. Mike Lane mentioned about the fire siren problem. It is a problem. We, the members of the fire department, know it, and as Mayor Merle pointed out, he knows, and we know, it's one of the negative side effects of our going to county dispatch. Here's what happens, so everybody understands it. 2 o'clock in the morning, someone calls that there's a wire down at Elizabeth and Division Street. When we had our own dispatchers, first of all, they would probably just send a police car just to check it out to see what it was. At the outside, they would do what we called at that time, a 3-still, and the dispatcher would put out a tone, just pagers for just 3 fire companies, for somebody to go check it out. The county don't or won't do that. If somebody calls there's a wire down, they have a touch screen and they touch this button on their screen that sets off the fire whistles, and our pagers do an ungodly screech, and it gets everybody up. Now, that's not the worst part. The worst part is at 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 minutes later, a police car got there, and the fire chief maybe, and says, oh, it's just a cable wire is down, we wrap it around a pole. So the fire chief calls the county and says, I don't need the fire department. Well, instead of just putting a message out, firemen, you can all go home, go back to bed, they hit that same button, right, Mike? You hear the thing go off 5 minutes later. That's for a cancellation. It's so stupid, but it's what they do, and it hasn't gone without notice. The members of the fire department are as unhappy as everybody else. Our chiefs have written letters. They've gone to county dispatch, talked to the director to tell him, can you tell your people to stop doing this? And they don't stop doing it. It's what they do, and they just keep doing it. I don't know what the answer is. Our board of fire chiefs is very frustrated, but again, it's one of the negative side effects that we're dealing with when we have county dispatch. So I just thought I would point out that it's not going unnoticed by the firemen themselves. We would like it to stop too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Good, can you please have a discussion with the Board of Fire Chiefs and ask them, to send us a letter, and then we send a letter from mayor and council. So-
Well, I was gonna say, Jay, can you reach out to the sheriff and see?
You know, I could,
Well,
certainly
would
can
just-
do that. I will,
I would like communication from the Board of Fire Chiefs, if that's okay, so that we have documentation in a pattern here, or whatever documentation they've sent to the county already.
typically, there is some established protocol that is coordinated prior to county taking dispatch. But I'll check, but having some information from the Board of Fire Chiefs or from,
If you could
the
include
chief-
me on that would be great. We set up, like, we worked with IT intensely, like, to set up how their system runs. So maybe we can get their head of IT involved as well as the sheriff or under sheriff involved. If I could be included in that process, I think I can at least help or get an answer.
Any other members of the public? Have a motion to close to the public?
Second.
All in favor?